Well, good evening, good evening, good evening. Now, this clock says 9:01. That clock there says 9 o'clock. I've gone by this clock, so I could be a minute late. I don't know. Anyway, good evening. How are we all? It's great to be back, I must say, after the little launch show we did last night with all the new guys that have come on board and telling you all what was happening over this next week and going forward. So we're all really pleased that we're back again. It was a good break, I have to say. But first show back, a bit shaky today. Don't know why. Maybe it's the heat. Anyway, we've got some news coming up. We've got some bits of VT. We've got the lovely Katherine Devlin from ECITA. She can't say hello yet because I haven't unmuted her. And we've got some little trails for you as well. But all that is coming up after what I like to call the titles.
VaperScene is proudly sponsored by Health E-Vape, UK purveyor of e-cigarettes and Pure Perfection e-liquids.
And yes, we're back. I just thought I could hear some other stuff going over my titles then, possibly. I don't know if you did or not. Anyway, good evening. It is Tuesday the 16th of September and you are watching VaperScene back on Vapor Trails TV. Good evening. Now then, I'm going to unmute Miss Devlin now because I have in the studio via Skype Katherine Devlin from ECITA. Say hello, Katherine. And I'm getting no sound from you. I wonder why. No?
That'll teach you to mute me.
Ah, there you go. Now you can. You should be able to hear Katherine now. Can everyone hear Katherine? That's the question.
Probably not if I don't say anything.
Oh dear. Yes, I think everyone can hear you. I hope so anyway. Yes, so Katherine is joining me for the entire show. Lucky woman. And we're going to be discussing bits of pieces that I've got. And also in the third half, we're going to reflect on the Vape Fest experience this year. Because we were both there. And it was, yes, it was rather interesting, wasn't it, KD?
It was indeed. Yeah, it was great. It was very different from previous years, but yeah, superb.
Yes. So we'll talk about that in the third half. But let's move on because we're going to start this week with a little bit of VT. It's actually audio with some pictures. And this is from the BBC World Service. And it's Robert West talking with Professor John Ashton, who we all know and love. Have a little listen and I'll come back to you in a second.
First today, you might have caught sight of someone who appears to be smoking, but when you look closely you realise the cigarette is made from plastic and that it's not smoke you're seeing, but vapour. It's an e-cigarette. Research on e-cigarettes is in its early days, but so far experts do seem to agree that if they are harmful at all, they're far less harmful than conventional cigarettes. But that's where the agreement ends. Some countries, such as Uruguay, have gone as far as banning them completely. The World Health Organization has now called for more regulation, including a ban in public indoor spaces and workplaces and on their promotion to young people. Some believe they're set to save thousands of lives, others that they could normalise the whole idea of smoking again, pushing more teenagers in the direction of real cigarettes. We brought together Professor John Ashton, President of the UK's Faculty of Public Health, and Robert West, Professor of Epidemiology and Public Health at University College London. Researchers in England have been tracking the use of e-cigarettes every month since 2006, and I began by asking Robert West how much they used.
There was a pretty substantial rise up until about 9 months ago, and since that time, at around 2 million users overall in this country, it has pretty much flattened off. So I don't think we're ever going to have an answer to the question, do e-cigarettes help people stop smoking? But I think we can have an answer to the question, in general, if people use e-cigarettes of a particular type, what kind of effect can they get?
John Ashton, the WHO is calling for more regulations, but even if they help some people to stop smoking, or they smoke these as an alternative to normal cigarettes, why have any regulations at all? Isn't that a good thing?
I think we have to be clear that the argument about these things has two sides to it. On the one hand, it's whether they have a role to play in helping people stop smoking, and the short answer is they've probably got a role to play somewhere there. But the other question that's of particular concern is whether they might act as a gateway into smoking among young people. And the most recent evidence on that from the United States last week indicates that young people who've been using so-called e-cigarettes are more likely to go on to real tobacco than the same-age kids that haven't done that.
So what are your concerns about how e-cigarettes could normalise the idea of smoking other sorts of cigarettes?
We've now had several years of children growing up in public environments without smokers very often. I have an 11-year-old, and if somebody is smoking around him, he comments on it. We saw somebody with an e-cigarette in a restaurant recently. He said, "What's he doing?" We've changed the social norm. If we change the social norm back that it's okay to have something in your mouth with smoke coming out of it, this sets a behaviour that young people may wish to follow. The big tobacco companies are now heavily moving into the e-cigarette market. They're buying up the more successful e-cigarette companies. You have to ask what it's all about producing e-cigarettes that are flavoured with bubble gum and other kinds of substances that are appealing to children or early teenagers.
Robert, isn't that a concern that people might start to think, oh, well, this is normal, this is what people do, and this is cool?
I think it would be a theoretical concern, but the difference between an e-cigarette, particularly the latest generation e-cigarettes, with the vapour, nothing like smoke, with the vapour that comes out of it, and cigarettes is so enormous that the idea that one could confuse the two, I think, is somewhat fanciful. But the question is, what's the evidence? And the evidence is that motivation to stop is going up. People are stopping smoking at higher rates, that the smoking prevalence in the young people is coming down, smoking prevalence in adults is coming down. So where's this renormalisation? We've, for many, many years, been looking at what methods you need to establish gateway phenomenon. You can't establish a gateway phenomenon by saying someone uses this and then they go on to use that, because you have to rule out the fact that the people who use the first thing are simply more likely to also be the kind of people who would use the second. If you look at the population rates, what you're seeing is that with the rise of e-cigarettes, you're actually seeing a substantial decline in smoking in the young. So that's one area where I think we need to be absolutely clear on the evidence.
That sounds like a good thing if we're seeing rates of smoking cessation go up.
I come back to the fact Robert's talking about smoking cessation, and that's half of the story. It's the smoking initiation that I'm concerned about as well. And we don't know the full story about smoking cessation. This is very early days. I mean, these things have only been around for a handful of years. Surely the message there is hurry slowly on the tobacco cessation front, and let's find out really about the gateway issue. I mean, if somebody was manufacturing cannabis-flavoured crisps, what would the row be about that? Imagine cannabis-flavoured crisps with added bubble gum.
But what's that got to do with any evidence? That's just a metaphor.
Because when manufacturers are cynically producing products that appeal to the juvenile palate, we have to ask what it's about.
Yeah, I agree. And so the question is, what's going to happen in the future? But when you say that there's evidence that we're experiencing a gateway effect, that just simply isn't true.
I haven't said that. What I'm saying to you is that as academics, as public health people with a responsibility to advise government and others on policy, we have to be careful what we do.
Robert, until we have all the evidence, is there an argument for saying, well, it's better to be safe rather than sorry, and it's better to have the regulations now and then perhaps take them away later on if the evidence isn't there to back up a problem?
Well, if you have the kind of regulations that are being proposed, we'll never get that evidence. For example, in countries like Uruguay, which I have huge respect for, with terrific tobacco control, they've decided to ban e-cigarettes. So there's no prospect of them ever collecting any of this evidence.
The WHO also wants to ban smoking of e-cigarettes in indoor workplaces and in indoor public places. Is there evidence that it's harmful to other people around them?
What we know so far is that some of these products include nickel, chromium, lead, and other things. We've spent the last 20 years getting rid of these kind of things from public environments. Why would we let them back in at this stage?
Robert, how much evidence is there on the dangers of passive smoking?
This is where it's really important to be quantitative about it. You talk about nickel, chromium, lead. That sounds very alarming. But then you look at the concentrations, and the English Department of Health has made it clear that from their analysis of the scientific evidence of the concentrations of toxins in the vapour, there is no reason to ban e-cigarette use in indoor public spaces by legislation. That's not to say that a restaurant or a bar or any other office or organisation might not say, well, we'd prefer it if people didn't use e-cigarettes in this situation. But to claim that there's a significant health risk.
But the problem with that is if you have it in some places and not in others, you're into this insidious process of re-normalising the process of people having something in their mouth from which smoke emits, an object that looks round and cigarette-like, and which provides a modelling of behaviour for children and for young people. But what we're talking here is, from a social psychology point of view, but from a behavioural point of view, we got rid of sweet cigarettes in sweet shops that were the shape of cigarettes. They had a tip that looked as though it was on fire. We banned those because of the modelling effect on children wanting to emulate adults. Now, if we have people in restaurants where children are going and they're using these things, this is deeply entrenched modelling behaviour. And it's something which the epidemiologists and the statisticians who ignore the behavioural science, ignore the social psychological science, and don't look at this modelling when you allow them to be used in some places.
Can I speak as a psychologist, which is what I'm trained as? And in theory, modelling is an important process in human learning. However, again, I have to go back to the evidence. And the evidence is that there has been no suggestion whatsoever of e-cigarette use in bars or clubs leading to a breakdown or any undermining of the smoke-free laws. And when you look at the difference between e-cigarettes and normal cigarettes and you smell the difference, you can see why. If I were to start using an e-cigarette here, you might just notice a bit of a smell from the flavourings and the propylene glycol. If I smoke a cigarette 10 yards down the corridor, we will all know about it. There's a massive difference.
Yeah, but that's naive when we're talking about children and young people modelling on adults. I'm surprised you studied psychology because you seem to have put that to one side in this discussion.
I certainly haven't. I think, again, I just go back to the evidence. There's all sorts of things that could be true. And what psychologists do is they try and find out, using evidence, what is true. It may be different in the future, who knows? But the evidence at the moment is that we're not seeing this model.
So if it may be different in the future, what's important is that we don't make policy decisions based on an absence of a full picture.
You can always say we have an absence of a full picture. The question is, how much of a picture do we have, and what does it tell us about what we should do? There is a risk, and I think the WHO, who I have huge respect for, is running a risk that if it starts to base recommendations on worries about what might happen in the future rather than evidence about what is happening, it will undermine its credibility.
The WHO report is based on massive support from the public health community from around the world who have concerns about the issues here. I think prudent advice in the situation that we are at the moment would be to say, let's not prejudice the gains we've made in the non-smoking environment. Let's recognise that e-cigarettes may have a part to play, so we don't want to ban them, but let's make sure that they're not used cynically to engage young people with a pattern of behaviour that may lead on to real tobacco.
My plea, I think, is that where people like us who should be on the same side, if we can come together in a common understanding of the evidence and try to see each other's positions and respect the evidence, then I think we can give better advice to countries around the world who need it.
Professors Robert West and John Ashton.
Yes, that was the BBC World Service Health Check programme, which I chanced upon earlier this afternoon, I have to say. And I've just been watching chat scroll by at a rate of knots and noticed a couple of things. Number one, Mr. Dibley, shame on you. Number two, cannabis flavoured Pringles. Now that would kill two birds for the price of one, wouldn't it? Yeah, it really would. That looks nothing like a cigarette, does it? It's round, but it's silver. It doesn't glow. Yes, the same old argument again and again and again. It's a gateway for children. They're going to use e-cigs and then they're going to go and buy a pack of 20. Really? Really? You think so? We're going to keep hearing this same old stuff time and time again. I'm not going to go into the whole Twitter row thing that was going around the past week or so. I will, however, just touch on the Daily Mail piece where it reports that Professor John Ashton has stepped down from his post at the FBH. But I'm not going to dwell too much on that because other things are happening in the background. Katherine, let me just unmute you. Pressing his button. What do you make on the whole gateway argument?
Well, it's been shown to be a fallacy, hasn't it? I mean, the gateway goes one way, out of smoking, and there's just no evidence to support there being a gateway into smoking. So it's just the good, the bad, the ugly, you know, again.
I'm not sure which is which, to be fair. Which is the good, which is the bad, which is the ugly.
That's for other people to decide, really, isn't it? I'll just let that hang out there and people can make up their own minds.
Absolutely, absolutely. What I liked about that piece from Robert West's point of view is he remained totally calm. He gave evidence. He has the evidence to back up what he says. And that some other people do not have the evidence to back up what they say.
Absolutely, he was a total professional.
He was.
And I just think it's a real shame that at the end of it, they were both described as professors because, frankly, from what I heard, there was only one who deserves that title.
I remain silent on that point. But that does lead me on quite nicely into my next little bit of VT. And this is from the Wall Street Journal Online. And it's about product placement, and a Canadian company has paid for product placement in a movie. Have a little look at this.
It helped Bacall seduce Bogey,
and Coogan gives New York 24 hours,
and lent Clint Eastwood some tough guy swagger.
Arizona Sheriff.
From Audrey Hepburn's long, skinny holder in Breakfast at Tiffany's to James Dean smokes in Rebel Without a Cause, the cigarette has been a popular Hollywood prop for decades. But for the past 16 years, tobacco companies have been blacklisted in the movie business, ever since an agreement between companies and government authorities made paid product placement in films off limits. Now, e-cigarettes want their shot at stardom. Companies like the Canada-based Smoke Stick are paying for placement in films like the upcoming Cymbeline, starring Mila Jovovich. That's because electronic cigarettes are not bound by that 1998 agreement. Some say it's a risky bet. The World Health Organization recently warned that the devices pose serious health risks, and many in the industry say regulations concerning the marketing of e-cigarettes are imminent.
Enjoying the game?
Oh, yeah, Sarah.
Still, they're becoming increasingly common on the big screen, giving an of-the-moment feel to films like Beneath the Darkness with Dennis Quaid and the upcoming Drive Hard with John Cusack. They're also being used to help convey a character's lack of sophistication. That was the case in 2010's The Tourist, starring Johnny Depp. Director Florian Henkel von Donnersmarck says he gave Depp's character an e-cigarette not for a Hunter S. Thompson flourish, but because he wanted him to look awkward and uncool.
Awkward and uncool, really? Interesting piece that, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that, myself and Catherine, after we come back from these messages from our sponsors. See you in about 1 minute and 32 seconds.
VaperScene is proudly sponsored by Health E-Vape, UK purveyor of e-cigarettes and Pure Perfection e-liquids.
Often imitated, never duplicated. Award-winning service and products from cloud9vaping.co.uk.
And now it's back to VaperScene on Vapor Trails TV. VaperScene is sponsored by Health E-Vape, UK purveyor of e-cigarettes and Pure Perfection e-liquids.
And welcome indeed back to part 2 of the first VaperScene of the winter season. I say winter. Yeah, so before the break we saw that little piece there from the Wall Street Journal Online talking about the Canadian e-cigarette company that's paid for an e-cigarette to be featured in a movie with Mila Jovovich. I shall be watching it because I quite like Mila Jovovich. Yeah, I think she's quite good. Fifth Element, classic film. Anyway, let's go to Catherine and see what she makes on that. What do you think about product placement, Catherine, of e-cigs?
Well, in a way, I think it's quite interesting, timing-wise, because we've got various agencies around the world trying to suggest that e-cigarettes should be treated like tobacco products. And of course, we all know that tobacco products have long since been banned from being advertised in any way on the big screen or the little screen or anywhere. And I think getting an e-cigarette as a product placed into a film that's pretty high budget, you know, with big names in and so on and so forth, sort of Hollywood, probably A-list, if not B, certainly, but, you know, she's right up there, isn't she, Mila Jovovich? So that, in a way, is a really good way of underlining the fact that these aren't tobacco products and shouldn't be affected by the same rules. So on that side of things, I'm kind of quite pleased it's happened. On the other side of things, possibly not the best kind of e-cig, but I guess if what they're looking for is something that can represent what smoking used to look like on the big screen to authenticate a scene or whatever it might be, then yeah, fair enough.
I mean, I didn't see any massive negative press when Doc Cotton used an e-cig in EastEnders, or when one of the policemen on Lewis one week used an e-cig. I mean, they've popped up in UK-based drama programmes, you know, a fair bit over the past year and a half, but there's not been any massive press about that. I guess with it being Hollywood and the fact that a company is paying for that product to be specifically used by somebody, and I believe there's only kind of one shot of the product name in the entire film. You just see the character using an e-cig, which is a cig-alike. you just see using it, and there's one shot of the actual product name. I don't know if it's only one shot because that's all they paid for, or if they were just trying to be a little bit cleverer about the use of. But, you know, we've seen them crop up before, and they're going to keep cropping up. And let's hope it's not just cigalikes. Let's hope it's, you know, Gen 2, Gen 3 type devices. Because, yeah, I mean, it's becoming normality. Yes, it's replacing smoking. And, you know, I remember the good old bad old days where you used to tune into BBC Two and watch the Embassy World Snooker Champion or the Embassy World Darts Championship. You know, it was supported by Embassy cigarettes, and they were all there chugging pint after pint after pint. That
was me thinking that was the Uruguayan embassy that sponsored all those events.
possibly. But yes, you know, and it got so bad that Hurricane Higgins relieved himself in a flower pot at the Embassy World Snooker Championships. No. Might have been a Benton Hedges one then, I'm not quite sure. But he definitely did it because it obviously been, you know, drinky. So now you watch the darts and, you know, it's massive again, the darts, but there's no alcohol there and there's no cigarette sponsorship. It's all online betting sponsorship now and, you know, that kind of stuff. So we've replaced one evil, if you like, with you can't advertise cigarette companies, but now you've got people advertising payday loans and, you know, online betting. Which is worse? I mean, obviously one kills you, but the other one is pretty damn bad as well, don't you think?
Well, who knows? I mean, I'm afraid I'm a bit of a liberal hedonist. I think if people want to do stuff, let them do it. If they're adults, let them choose for themselves.
Yeah, I think most of us.
And I mean, okay, there are some kids who watch the snooker and the darts and the football and whatever, but they have done for centuries, and they're not going to watch the adverts. The adverts are placed there for the adult consumers who've got the money to go and buy the products. It's not about targeting children. It never has been.
Absolutely.
So I think that's a bit of a fatuous argument, really. That we hear trotted out from time to time. But at the end of the day, you know, the rules are there for a reason, fine. And the e-cig advertising, it shouldn't be the same as tobacco because they're not tobacco products, simple as.
Yes, indeed. I just changed shot there so I could look down at chat. See what's happening. I did hear something on the other BBC piece that was with Clive Bates and John Ashton on Radio 2, Jeremy Vine's show. And he was talking about somebody using an e-cig for cocaine use or something like that. And, you know, whenever there's a device to be used, then somebody who wants to use cocaine or crack cocaine or heroin or whatever the, you know, the illegal drug is, will find a way. I have I've got a can there. I won't show you the brand. I've got a can there. I could use that if I wanted to smoke crack cocaine, could I not? I do believe that there was a certain soap star that was filmed going down the motorway in a car using a lager can for crack. But, you know, there you go. As I showed...
Wouldn't know about any of that. I'm far too innocent.
You and me both know, Katherine Devlin, that you're not innocent. But there you go.
On that, I actually am.
What I will say is, you know, a bit of tin foil that you use in your kitchen can be used for drug use. You know, an e-cig.
Stop giving them tips.
An e-cig. You see it all the time on movies where they're doing stuff. You know, you walk down the streets I walking down the streets in Paris one night and Barcelona another time, and I saw people in a back alley with needles and all sorts. But, you know, at the end of the day, if you're going to use those kind of things, then you're going to use those kind of things. It shouldn't be something that somebody attaches to e-cigs to try and discredit them, because we all know, those of us who've been vaping a reasonable amount of time, and it's 3 years for me in February. I know it's longer for you, and most of the team have been using them for 3 years plus, most of chat as well. But to all the new people who have taken it up, you know, you don't want to touch a cigarette anymore, do you?
Oh no.
No.
Hell no, I can't. I've tried. Every no smoking day I've gone and bought my packet of cigarettes. So I stopped now. This year I didn't bother because I know I can't smoke them. They're just too revolting. But
Yeah.
I used to buy a pack of 10 on no smoking day just out of principle. But they're just too revolting now. I can't smoke them.
Well, you won't be able to buy a pack of 10 for much longer, will you?
dying breath to protect the right of people who want to smoke.
Yes.
It's about choice. It should be about choice.
Yes, absolutely. Let's see what chat are saying. I'm not going to say what you just said, Rath McCann. No, but it's something free with a starter kit. Yeah. Leanna Lawler says, we use sex and celebrities to sell cars. Those ads aimed at children. Quite correct. I used to go to the motor show at the NEC in Birmingham, and there would always be, on the premium cars, there would always be scantily clad ladies. Now, I haven't been to a motor show for a long time, probably 30 years. And I probably think they're doing the same thing. So, you know, sex sells, and celebrities sell, and lots of TV shows have product placement as well, just going back to the product placement side of things. And they have to put the little P in the bottom of the screen now, but they're all doing it. So they're subliminally trying to get you to buy a specific type of spring water or tea bags or whatever. They'll always get that. So, you know, I think it's going to be a long battle, and we're always going to get the same kind of argument: gateway, gateway, gateway. Think of the children. But let's move on from that. Let's move on from that now. Miss Devlin. Miss Devlin. Oh,
But you know
slip.
how fond I am of Gary, but
It's because I saw Gary Dibley's name there. Mr. Dibley. Don't tell the wife. What I'd like you to tell me is what you're up to ECITA wise. I know that before we went live, you pinged me across some pictures. So why don't you tell us what you're up to?
oh, we've got some really sexy equipment now. We've got, I mean, I don't know if you can show the pictures, but we've got all our battery testing. I think we've got it all now. All our battery testing equipment. We've designed and had built basically these special enclosures so that we can blow up batteries safely. So we've got a couple of nuclear microwaves and a few little smaller boxes that we can do the 7-day tests in. We've got an oven so we can bake batteries until they blow. Because we've struggled. We haven't managed to explode a battery just by ramping up the voltage on it at all. The only time we actually got a real kind of reaction out of a battery was when we baked one at 130 degrees. And then it finally went bang. But actually, all that happened even then was that the end cap came off and warped a bit, and there was a bit of soot and smoke. Okay, quite a lot of smoke. It stank. The outer casing of the battery, it was an Ego type, outer casing melted off and the button melted. But actually, that was quite a safe fail, to be fair. It didn't blow up. It didn't catch fire in the sense of, would have ignited something else. And let's face it, who's going to put their batteries in 130 degrees? Nobody other than us, because we are that insane. But yeah, it's been quite entertaining.
I've got the slide up. I've got the slide up now. So you've got the safety enclosure with built-in camera box, a log-in thermometer, an adjustable power supply unit, a scientific oven. Scientific oven. You'll have to tell me what the scientific oven is. A secure closure and a power input aperture. And you've also got 7-day testing enclosures. What are you doing in the 7-day testing enclosures? I take it you're putting something under heavy load for 7 days.
Not actually heavy load. There's 3. No entropy, he hasn't. There's 3 settings that we test them at. So we set them at the lowest sort of end, somewhere in the middle, and then at a higher outside range. And then that over 7 days, they'll sit in that safe enclosure so that if they blow, they're contained. And they'll sit there for 7 days, which is part of the British standard testing, actually, to just run them for a long time on charge, just to see what happens if they keep going. So that's one of the tests. And then the nuclear microwave is used for testing the battery with its charger, but there's logging of the temperature, and it's disconnected from it's connected. The charger is connected to the power, but then between the charger and the battery, there's a monitoring thing so that we can see how much power is coming out of the charger, how much is going into the battery, and monitor all of that and log it all. And then we can ramp up the power accordingly and see what we can do to these batteries and chargers to sort of stress them a bit and make sure that they're okay. And then the oven is a scientific oven because it's a specially designed oven that you can grade the temperature increases over a period of time. So we can incrementally increase the temperature by 5 degrees every minute, like reliably, which is what we did with the one that finally went we got it up to 130 by increments of 5 degrees per minute, which is, again, part of the British standards testing. But we've really wanted to focus in on battery testing specific for this sector, because although lithium-ion batteries are used by a lot of different sectors, it's become the real problem with e-cigs. We always knew it would be from when we first started. That was the biggest thing that everybody said was the biggest health concern. The thing that was most likely to kill people was the batteries and chargers every time. And that is what we've seen happen. Where we've had deaths, God forbid, and serious injuries from e-cigs, it's been because of the batteries and chargers. It has not been from the e-liquid. It has not been from the inhalation of the vapor. It's been batteries exploding and killing people in some situations and injuring people in others. And that's not acceptable for any industry. But while we're under the microscope, as we are at the moment, we wanted to address that one head on. So we've included battery testing in the paths that we're doing with British standards. And in actual fact, we've already had an indication from trading standards that they would like to take our battery testing out and use it on phone chargers and other things as well, because it's more robust than the British standard. And, you know, we designed it specifically for e-cigs. So it kind of will answer that before people start messing about with us too much and saying, yeah, but your batteries kill people. You know, we thought we'd preempt that one and head it off at the pass. And yeah, the testing is loads of fun. Oh my God, we're having so much fun with it. Stick the other slide up. Go on, let's embarrass Tom.
Which slide is that? We've got the emissions slide.
First.
The safety.
No, safety.
We've got
don't put on my dreadful drawing.
We've got
the safety one.
We've got the safety one.
Obviously, our office is attached to a house. And there are people who live next door. So the last thing we want to do is go creating explosions in our office, in our test room, and then have people next door dying because we've set fire to their house. So we've got a huge amount of fire safety precautions. And obviously we didn't want Tom to burn either. So he dresses up like Beaker from the Muppets with his leather apron and his sleeve protectors and all that stuff. Now, that somebody just in chat has just said about people using the wrong chargers for batteries. That's a really key point. What we have to acknowledge is the fact that actually we all use the wrong chargers for things all the time, routinely. And this is what's called expected abuse with what consumers are going to do with your product. The reality is we are so used to having USB chargers for things that we can use on different things. Sat-nav in the car, if that'll fit your phone, you'll charge your phone with it. You won't even think twice about it. If it fits, you'll use it. And it's the same with batteries. For e-cigs, you know, we have to assume that some consumers are going to just plug it into anything it fits to, which is why we're moving, hopefully over the next year or so, to a situation where we'll get everybody moved over so that battery charge protection is built into the batteries themselves, so that it doesn't matter what charger you're using it with, and that way we can protect a hell of a lot more people.
Yes, that would be sensible to have more protected batteries, because of, you know, on some battery chargers, the protection's in the charger. On some batteries, the protection's in the battery. But if you've got both not protected and you're using the wrong charger, then that's when you can get issues. And we've seen, especially in Yorkshire, there was a fire where someone died a few weeks ago in Bradford. And that was again put down to inappropriate use of a charger with an unprotected battery. What we need to also touch on is the whole sub-ohming culture and stacking batteries, where the device becomes so hot you have to hold it with a towel while you're vaping. Now, someone is going to end up with lost fingers, lost hands, or loss of life at some point if they continue to do crazy things like that and put it on YouTube. Those kind of things are going to get people seriously injured, if not killed. And I know the guys on Monday are going to be looking at sub-ohming over the time, because Andy is a sub-ohmer and he understands it. I don't understand it as much. I don't tend to sub-ohm. I like just to keep everything above 1 ohm. I've gone a bit below in the past, but not to some of the extent. And some of the guys I saw at Vape Fest this year, huge plumes of vapor coming off, and you know, 0.3, 0.4 ohm coils. It's very dangerous stuff if you don't understand what you're doing and you don't understand the mechanics of resistances and power, etc. What do you think about that, Miss D?
Well, again, I don't want to tell anyone what they should and shouldn't do, but when it comes to personal safety and fire safety with that sort of thing, if you don't know what you're doing, please don't mess with it. Really. And the problem is that with what I've seen on, again, like you said, at Vape Fest, we saw an awful lot of it. And on the videos online, it's just terrifying to see the astonishing lack of knowledge that a lot of these people have. And I mean, let's face it, none of us is a battery expert. You know, very few of us would be able to understand all the intricate workings of how it all works. That's not normal life. But, you know, if you're going to try and go down that route, please educate yourself, understand what you're playing with, and take the necessary precautions. And really, I mean, God, pain is there as one of nature's early warning systems. If your battery is too hot for you to hold, it's probably too hot to operate safely. If you're having to hold it with a tea towel, you're doing something dangerous. Now, obviously, it's your choice if you want to do that, but you do also need to then think about the people around you. You know, is your house connected to somebody else's house? If you set yourself on fire, are other people going to be affected and die or be injured from it? So please, just educate yourselves. If you're going to mess with the sub-bombing thing, just learn enough about it so that you can keep yourself and other people safe. Otherwise, please stay clear of it.
Yeah, I mean, it really is an advanced vaping form, really. It's not for the faint-hearted, and it's certainly not for total beginners, because accidents will and do happen. Listen, we're at 22 now, so we're going to take the second set of ads. Don't normally get 2 sets of ads in my show, but we do now. So we're going to get the second set of ads, and when we come back, we're going to talk some more with Katherine, and we're going to have a little recap, a little VT on my VapeFest experience this year. Yes, see you in about minute and 30 seconds, something like that.
VaperScene is proudly sponsored by Health eVape, UK purveyor of e-cigarettes and Pure Perfection e-liquids.
iVaper and iVaper Elixir, based in Yorkshire, for your e-cig needs. That's iVaper.co.uk and iVaper-elixir.co.uk. iVaper and iVaper-elixir.co.uk, proud sponsors of VaporTrails.tv.
And now it's back to VaperScene on VaporTrails TV. VaperScene is sponsored by Health eVape, UK purveyor of e-cigarettes and Pure Perfection e-liquids.
Oh my goodness, part 3. Well, hey! a new departure for VaperScene. You're getting a full 60 minutes every week. Let's hope I can give you plenty of material. Now then, we're going to have a little word from Mr. Gary Dibley. And if you're watching last night, you'd have seen that Gary is going to become part of VaperScene, and he's going to be sending me some stuff every week. But he's going to explain it himself. So here he is.
Hi, it's Gary. We're back, but I'm back this time with Marco on VaperScene. I'm going to be bringing you what is going to be called MFT, which is Make, Fix and Turn. All of the, quite self-explanatory. We're going to be making stuff, fixing stuff and probably turning stuff on the lathe. What we've got coming up, I just don't know. As per usual, we're just going to wing it and see what happens. But you can expect something a little bit like this.
Oh, are you excited? Oh, it's a nice little bit of VT there from Mr. Gary Dibley, and he will be making his first appearance on next week's VaperScene. And sometimes he'll be on live with me, sometimes he'll just be a bit of VT, hopefully with that fantastic catchy tune to introduce his segment. Yes, so it's all work in progress. So watch this space, and we'll see what we can bring you every week. Yeah, and it's going to be good having Gary on board too. It's very lonely here when you're on your own. No, it's going to be really good. I'm looking forward to it. Now, Catherine, I've got a question from chat for you. Let me put you up on the screen. There we go. So, Entropy in chat said, Catherine, a comment on my blog said that the British Standard BSEN 62133-2014 states that all portable sealed secondary cells must have overcharge protection built in. Is this something you're aware of?
Standards Institute and with the fire service to work out exactly what's what with the British standard and what's what with our standard, and how we can make sure that we're doing the very best we can for the lithium batteries that are involved for our sector, but also, as I said before, looking to spill that out over into other industries potentially as well. So yeah, it's something that we're aware of. We've obviously got a pretty intimate working knowledge of that standard. The difficulty is, of course, that standard is great as far as it goes, but it's not specific enough to the way that we use batteries with e-cigs, which is why we've added in extra tests, and we've gone a little bit kind of further than just what the standard talks about. In terms of charge protection circuitry, it's something that we are going to move towards, but trading standards and the guys that we've been talking to agreed that it would be unnecessary and inappropriate to take all the existing products off the market, which, I mean, 90% of the existing products on the market would have to come off if we did that. And the reality is that actually they're out there doing a lot of good for a lot of people at the moment. So rather than just say, right, well, whoops, this is a mess up, we need to get all these things off the market just in case, unless we see a massive increase in explosions and people getting injured and harmed from the batteries that are out there, we're not going to be pushing for this early, like immediately, but we're certainly going to be moving towards it over the sort of next 12 months, 18 months. We need to give the industry time to catch up. We need to give them time to sell through what they've got, as long as they fail relatively safely, and this is where the testing is so important. Now, obviously, the way that we've set up our testing, yeah, okay, at the moment we're the only ones who've got the equipment we've got, but we're very open to open test houses. We don't want to be like taking this as a monopoly. We want to make sure that it's duplicatable and can go anywhere, anyone can do it. And we've done everything we've done with the standards work in such a way that we can allow other test houses to be able to build it for themselves too. I mean, I don't know if you want to bring up the picture of the emissions testing apparatus. It's a very bad drawing, but just to give an idea of how easy access our testing stuff is. Are you able to put that one up, Marco?
Yeah, that's up now.
Yeah. Okay, so I mean, that is a ridiculously bad picture. I am rubbish at drawing, but just to give everybody a rough idea, this is the equipment that you'd need to do the emissions testing that we've put up in our pads. So this is for gathering the emissions from electronic cigarette hardware and liquids. So the picture that you've got there shows the testbed atomizer that we've designed, but again, that prototype's already out there. We published it on our blog straight away, and I know already other test houses are looking at getting some done to be able to use them. And then the rest of it is all stuff that you can buy online, you can buy in the high street. Yeah, there's a vacuum traps, very standard equipment, silicon tubes, easy peasy. The hydraulic actuator, yeah, okay, it's not something that most of us have got in the garage, but you can get hold of them easily, and any of the test houses would be able to do that and set that up, and you fill the trap with methanol, and just bubble the emission through the methanol by the actuator pulling up the syringe and drawing the air through, so it bubbles it all through the methanol. And then you've gathered the emission into the solvent, the methanol, and then it's a liquid that you can test. And then you can see exactly what that liquid is emitting by using a standardized device, the testbed atomizer. On the flip side of that, you can do pre-filled one-piece Cigalite jobbies just by sticking them onto the tube instead of the testbed atomizer. And any other atomizer you can stick on that end of the tube, fill it up with the standard solution, which we would make up as 78 PG, 18 VG, 2 deionized water and 2 nicotine, and away you go. You can test any atomizer, any liquid, easy peasy, and any test house can do it, which means that nobody would need to be queuing up for a test house that can test their product, so everybody can get on with this quickly and in time for when TPD comes in, or whatever, whether it's TPD or whether it's a better version of something, who knows. We're working on that hard behind the scenes, as you can imagine.
Yes, indeed. I'm not going to say what Disco Dares has asked. You can look at chat yourself for that. Disco Dares, shame on you. Shame on you. No more cider for you next time I'm in Bristol.
I've got to go back and find that now.
Talking about kind of juice and everything else, we really need to kind of touch on the whole VIP and the diacetyl thing.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah. What's kind of happened with that now, and where are we with that?
Well, do you know what? I'm actually, although it was horrific for them, I'm actually really pleased that that one went out publicly the way it did, because actually what that was is a really classic example of precisely how regulation is supposed to work in practice. That was a company that routinely tests its liquids with us, and we had identified that there was this tiny, minuscule amount of diacetyl in that juice, and so they withdrew it from sale. There was no need for a big hoo-ha and a product recall. It wasn't dangerous. It was never going to cause anyone any harm, but there was a product withdrawal instigated, and during that process there was a problem identified with their processes, so those were tightened up, which is exactly how the process is supposed to work. Nobody got hurt. The products were removed from sale. The product, if they're going to bring back a butterscotch flavour, they will have it reformulated and they'll test it before it goes to market. It was a win-win-win all the way, apart from people using it as an excuse to just have a go at one company. Which I think is a real shame, because actually this was evidence that that company did a really good job and did its job properly and did its due diligence properly. Regulation doesn't mean that you're not going to get problems with products. What it means is that when there's a problem identified, there's a course of action to follow that makes sense and means that people don't get harmed. That was a win.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing, there was the unfortunate kind of juxtaposition, if you like, of another story where a poor lady's husband had died from a lung condition, and they found oil in his lungs. And
allegedly.
She's desperately trying to find out what it was that actually killed him. And, everyone's got as much sympathy as they can for the guy that's died. But there's been no link, 100% link to the use of e-cigs.
There's not even a 1% link, Marco. And I mean, I was widowed myself. I know what it's like. It's horrific. And I really do feel for that poor woman. You want someone to blame. You want something to pin it on. But really, the media and the scientists, the doctors, anyone else, that doctor in Gateshead, all of them, they need to stop encouraging her to blame e-cigs for this, because it's absolutely not possible when he was using the kind of product he was using, that he could have got a lipoid pneumonia from the vaping.
Yeah, I mean, if you make your own liquids, and I've heard in the forums people are using things like cinnamon sticks, vanilla pods, bakery flavors. You need to be so careful when you're mixing your own liquids to use a flavoring that's been specifically designed to be used with e-cigs. Now, a lot of them obviously come from the kind of bakery flavouring sector to start off with, but there need to be no oils in them. So for goodness sake, if you are making your own juice, don't use a couple of drops of albus oil in it, because you will be inhaling that in that way. But on the flip side of that, albus oil is designed to be inhaled in hot water. You put a couple of drops in and put your head over the towel, which I've done on many an occasion, I have to say, to clear a stuffy nose. But for e-juice, you really can't use anything other than what you get from a proper supplier.
Absolutely. I mean, the real reason behind that, though, Marco, if I can just jump in on that, is that oils will not volatilize in an e-cig at the heat of the temperatures that we get in an e-cig. So what you'll do is you'll caramelise it on the coil and then be inhaling acrylins and acetaldehyde and goodness knows what else that you don't want from burning composite matter on the coil. That's the real reason why we don't want oils in e-liquid, because it's just not going to volatilize properly.
And yeah, that's something that we need to bear in mind, and we need to make sure that we're, if we are mixing, because I've been mixing my own juice for nearly 3 years. I'm very careful. I use nice specific measurements, and I use proper ingredients from trusted sources. And I think that's the main thing. It's using it from a trusted source.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what's next? What's next for ECITA then? What are you doing next?
Well, Tom's off to Ash Wales on Friday with the lovely Ridian, and who's the other guy? Oh, I can't remember. Pete Dermody, that's the one. They're going off to Ash Wales on Friday to do this thing with Louise Ross, which is going to be exciting. And I'm off to Paris, lucky me.
Oh, lucky you.
For 3 days at the VAP Expo next week, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. So, yeah, it's busy. But, I mean, we've done the PAS-based document. That's gone now to steering group, and we're getting some really positive feedback from that. So that's got to carry on through its processes now. And our focus is now turning back to RISE, which our Industry Standard of Excellence book really needs the final update done on that. And then we'll be getting that out. We're also working on our new website. So there's a hell of a lot going on at the minute. It's really kind of flat out busy, but it's good. And I mean, one thing I'm really enjoying at the moment is the fact that we're getting much more stuck in with trading standards officers again, and kind of helping members around the country when they've got trading standards officers who just don't understand the products, trying to suggest things that are not true.
Yes, doesn't help, does it? Doesn't help.
Not really, no. And of course, we threw a bit of a spanner in the works with the whole BIBA report thing and said, well, actually, up to 2.5%, these things are not even toxic. So, as you can imagine, we've had a few exchanges with trading standards over that. But they're coming on side, and the Health and Safety Executive agreed, you know, that we followed all the right courses of action and taken all the right advice, and the advice we were giving made sense and was correct. But they won't officially come out and say that, of course. They hide behind the fact that it's up to the suppliers to decide. So.
Indeed. Now, we have waffled so much. I've only got about 3 minutes left. So guys, I will show you my little VapeFest video that I've had for you today next week. But very briefly, if you can sum up VapeFest 2014 in a minute, what would you say, Catherine?
It was awesome. It's not like VapeFest used to be, but it was absolutely awesome. And there were pockets. I mean, people might call them cliques, but there were pockets of small, intimate gatherings where you could just chinwag with some mates, new and old, which is very like how it was in the old days. And I think to be able to do that on such a large scale was absolutely superb, and my hat's off to the guys who organised it. Absolutely superb.
Yeah, I mean, I had an absolutely just a huge whale of a time. I didn't stop all day. I mean, I sat down maybe half a dozen times and had a can of something. But I was telling Catherine before we came live, it wasn't until I got back to my hotel that I realised I hadn't even gone for a wee all day. I was just filming and talking to people and having a good time. So I'm looking forward to next year, whatever it may be. And there is a Facebook page at the moment about VapeFest Yorkshire, which will be good for me since I live in Yorkshire. But we'll see how all these plans pan out over the next 12 months. And if I can, I would love to do a live show from VapeFest 2015. We'll see how we go on that one. But in the meantime, thank you so much, Catherine, for joining me tonight. It's been a pleasure as always. We'll get you on again soon. Let me just go to this shot because I need to tell you what's going on from now, really. Excuse me. Tomorrow night, it is the show with no name with Matt. Yeah, at 9 o'clock. Could be half an hour, could be 45 minutes, could be an hour. Don't know yet. He's going along the same route that I did. But I do know he's got a lot of stuff in the can already for tomorrow night. Thursday night, Mr. Dave Dawn is back in the house with his good buddy Keith on the top pocket and possibly Kat, I would imagine. Yeah. Friday, we have no show. Sunday, again, there's no show at the moment, but from the 12th of October, Dave Kitson will be back with Dave's Tackle Box. Monday night, it's the first show with Andy and Davey, which is Drips and Tips. Yes, indeed. So I'm looking forward to seeing that one. And I will be here next Tuesday with the next edition of VaperScene, incorporating Make, Fix and Turn with Mr. Gary Dibley. Until then, my friends, have a good week. Enjoy the rest of the shows. And I'll see you soon. Thanks for watching. Cheerio.
VaperScene is proudly sponsored by Health E-Vape, UK purveyor of e-cigarettes and Pure Perfection e-liquids.